Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James, the channel that brings you all your latest Rangers news. Yes, guys, we're going to talk Rangers managers. So, look, it's been confirmed, obviously, that the takeover has taken place. The new ownership is in place now. The new board of directors in place. Everything, obviously, looking to the future now. And as I mentioned on the video this morning, it's kind of like, going back to the days of the Graham Souness era, wasn't it? When Souness walked through the door and the new revolution began. We're kind of at that same period now where this club are on the verge of changing back to perhaps going back to where we were as a club back at the top of the Scottish game. Very much that is the intention of Andrew Kavanagh and Parag Marathe, as they said in that open letter to supporters yesterday. Obviously, one of the key appointments, as they mentioned in that open letter, is the appointment of a new head coach, men's head coach, as they put it. Obviously, as they said, the process is underway. Talks are underway. Obviously, and people have been interviewed, people have been spoken to, people have been ruled out. People have been ruled in. A lot of the media this morning is kind of saying that it's very much between Davide Ancelotti and Russell Martin as to who the new Rangers manager will be. That is the smart talk on the news lines this morning. But, according to the Italian media, now the Italian media obviously have a big focus on sport over there. You've got, those of you who remember Gazzetta Football Italia, remember James Richardson sitting in his outside his cafe with his espresso in his little Danish or his little muffin or whatever it was, looking at the Corriere della Sera, the Gazzetta dello Sport, etc., all those Italian sports newspapers. You can see that obviously football and football newspapers are massive in that country, and obviously it's the home of Fabrizio Romano, it's the home of Sasha Tovaglieri, it's the home of a number of in-the-know sports journos. So what's coming out of Italy? I mean, you'd expect obviously something to be coming out of there, given the fact that obviously Davide Ancelotti is Italian. He's the son of the most famous, probably one of the greatest Italian managers of all time in Carlo Ancelotti. I would argue Carlo Ancelotti probably the greatest manager at this moment in time. I'd certainly put Carlo Ancelotti as a better manager than Pep Guardiola, given the titles that Ancelotti has won and the fact that he's won European Cups across multiple clubs. Same as I know Guardiola has, but I just put Ancelotti a whole lot higher than Pep. So anyway, Davide Ancelotti, obviously a man who's worked for a number of different clubs under his father, is looking to branch out on his own, step out from his father's shadow and become his own man. As we've seen in previous videos, he has an excellent coaching CV. He also has an excellent coaching education, obviously finishing top of his class in his UEFA Pro license. This is a guy who knows what he wants, when he wants it, and how he's going to get there. Now, according to the Italian media this morning, the deal with Rangers is 99% done, and it's just a case of tying up the finishing touches on the deal. That apparently is what the Italian media are saying this morning, that it is highly likely that there will be an announcement sooner rather than later naming Davide Ancelotti as the new head coach of Rangers Football Club. This is absolutely massive news for our football club. This is a real name. Guys, you can talk about the fact that he hasn't got any coaching experience. He's only worked for his dad, blah blah blah, etc. etc. But this is a big name. This is a big hire. The Ancelotti name is a name that carries a status across Europe. The Ancelotti name is a major name. With any sort of family business. If you've associated with a particular family business and you have that family's name, your name will carry, and your name obviously opens doors for you. And Davide Ancelotti certainly does that. And this is a guy who has connections. He's worked with some of the... this is the thing you've got to think about in terms of his coaching experience. He has worked with some of the best players in world football. If you look at this present moment in time, and you look, at that present Real Madrid squad, and you look at some of the players that he has worked with this season, has, not just this season, but, in previous seasons where he has obviously, got them to win, along with his dad, got them to win to La Ligas, to Champions Leagues, etc., etc. And this is the team that are obviously going to the Club World Cup, which... you can think what you want about the Club World Cup. I think it's a bit of a joke, personally. But this is a guy who's worked with the likes of Dani Carvajal, David Alaba, Jude Bellingham, Eduardo Camavinga, Vinny Jr., Valverde, Kylian Mbappe, Luka Modric, Rodrigo, Brahim Diaz, Antonio Rudiger, Dani Ceballos. Arda Güler, Tuchemani, Lunin, Courtois, Endrick. He's worked with some absolutely fantastic footballers. I suppose then he'll come to Rangers and go, okay, now some of this life shit. I think going from Vinny Jr. to Dessers, Jesus Christ. And Danny Carvajal to James Tavernier. Oh my God, it's like, I don't know, it's like shopping in, I suppose it's like going to shopping in Waitrose to going to shopping in Aldi, isn't it? You've got to really slum it if you go and shop in Aldi. Anyway, he'll get used to it. But I've never really thought about it like that. But anyway, so it looks, according to the Italian media, they're saying this is 99% done and the announcement will follow shortly. We've seen from the statement that Andrew Kavanagh and Parag Marathe put out yesterday that this is very much clearly on the agenda. It is, up there, and it will be sooner rather than later. And like I said, I think this guy opens doors. He really does. And I just want to address another thing. People have talked about the fact, he doesn't have any experience of Scottish football. Well, look, and he has experience of English football in terms of that he's worked with Everton. The English game, the Scottish game has a very similar intensity, it has a very similar physicality to it. And yes, I get that, in the EPL, you haven't got the cloggers. You haven't got the likes of Livingston and Dundee and Hibs and Hearts and teams like that, although I think that's pretty slanderous to Hibs and Hearts. But, yes, you haven't got those cloggers, the St Mirrens of this world, the kickers, the foulers, the hammer throwers, have you? You haven't got that kind of thing in the English league to some degree. But you've still got a situation where, when teams who are of a perceived higher status go to teams like, teams of a perceived lower status in England, they do have to come up against lower blocks. They do have to come up against harder defences to get through, mass defences, etc., etc. You've only got to look at the likes of Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, what they come up against week in, week out against some of those so-called lesser teams in the EPL. Yes, I know it's not the same as in Scotland because, I get, that even the likes of Wolves, West Ham, Everton, which way he was at, the newly promoted team still have players that are worth far in excess of anything that even Rangers can dream of having. But he has a tactical awareness. He has an ability to change tactics. He has an ability to unlock defences. This is a guy who has kind of, through his work with his UEFA Pro licence, through his work with different types of teams, has learned different approaches to football. This is not a one-trick pony. This is not a guy who has a plan A and no plan B. That's very much kind of the criticism that's levelled at Russell Martin, that he has a plan A, which is to play beautiful, attractive, possession-based football. And if it doesn't work, then the plan is to do plan A, but better, but just with different players. Very much in a Philippe Clement trying to style, although Clement never played beautiful passing football. Ancelotti is a modern manager. He's an advanced manager. He's an aggressive manager. He's an attacking manager. He has the high press. He has very much that way of playing. So, overall, you've got to look at this as a huge positive. And a huge move for the club. And a kind of a change in the philosophy, I think, of the club as well. This is a guy who is coming from massive clubs, who is coming from, a huge level of experience. This is a guy who is a major European name in terms of, his last name. He's worked, like I said, with some major European clubs. This is not going for some two-bit coach that used to work for Steven Gerrard, or going for someone who used to captain the club, whose only qualification to be a manager is that he can shout very loudly and he's staunch. This is not that sort of appointment. This is a proper football appointment. This is looking at someone who has, an excellent coaching CV, who is, has the skills and the ability and the technical ability to do the job. And people talk about, well, what about signings and attracting players and buying players? Well, that's not his job. That is not his job. The modern football market, the modern football kind of way of doing things is very much that the sporting director, the technical director, whatever position, the Kevin Thelwell, for example, he is the man who is responsible for finding the players, scouting the players, buying the players, doing the contracts. Yes, the manager has an input, but not as much as he used to. We've got the days of Walter Smith and Graham Souness, going saying, I want Terry Butcher, Trevor Stephen, Gary Stevens, Robert Fleck, Davy McPherson. I want these players. I want Brian Laudrup, Paul Gascoigne, Rina Gattuso, Michael Moles. Those days are over. Those days are over. The manager doesn't do that anymore. That's not his way of doing things. It's the way it works down south. You know, if you look at the top clubs in England, Arsenal, Mikel Arteta is not the man who buys the players for Arsenal. It's their new. It was Edu. It's now obviously, I think it's Berta, the guy's called. Liverpool. It's not Arne Slot that buys the players. It was not Jurgen Klopp that bought the players. It's, you know, it's Richard Hughes. It's Michael Edwards. You know, you go to Manchester United. It's not Ruben Amorim that we're buying the players this summer. It's Omar Barada, who is the sporting director of the football club. You know, so we even like, say, for instance, taking a club that is still a big club but not one of the biggest in England, Aston Villa. It's not Unai Emery that buys the players. It's Monkey, who is the sporting director. That's Monkey, not Monkey. Although Monkey would be a lot funnier name. And I could just imagine, you know, the one from the Johnny Vegas adverts doing it. That would be hilarious. But anyway, yeah, it's him that buys the players. So, look, that's the way it works now. So those of you kind of worrying that he, you know, he's never played the game particularly. And this is another thing that we're kind of moving away from now. We're moving very much to kind of an American sporting model in terms of coaches. You know, you look at the likes of Farioli, Mourinho, both were coaches that have had zero football experience. You know, as I mentioned on the video the other day, Francesco Farioli, yes, he had some experience as a goalkeeper, but never made any major breakthrough, yet has gone on to manage clubs like Ajax and Nice. Jose Mourinho was never a player, yet has won European Cups, UEFA Cups, English league titles, Italian league titles, Spanish league titles. You know, these are guys who win things, yet have not been footballers. And it's very much, like I said, the American sporting model. You go to America and you look at, you know, some of the top NFL coaches, and they've never played the game. They've never played the game. You know, these are guys who have not ever had any experience of actually playing the game. They've come up through coaching networks, through college programs. You know, they've kind of done their time, you know, like Ancelotti has, learning different roles. I mean, you look, for example, if you go to the 49ers and you look at their head coach at the moment, is a guy called Kyle Shanahan. He's the head coach, son of another famous NFL coach. His dad was also an NFL coach, and he learnt alongside his dad. Can anyone see any similarities here? The Shanahans and the Ancelottis. Anyway, he started off as a graduate assistant at UCLA. Then he went to work for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an offensive quality control coach. Then he was a wide receivers coach at the Houston Texans, a quarterbacks coach, and an offensive coordinator with the Texans, the Redskins, the Browns, the Falcons, and then became a head coach. At no point did he ever play the game. He learnt his coaching experience by working his way up, the same way that Ancelotti has. And we're moving very much towards that American-esque model in the UK now as well. And there's no reason to doubt that it can't be successful. You know, I genuinely don't believe that this cannot be successful. And there is obviously, you know, the 49ers enterprises that now own the club will see what has worked in America for them. They'll see and they'll look back, you know, their coaching experiences, their head coaches that have come through and been a huge success for them, and they'll kind of start to apply a similar sort of model to Rangers. And why would we doubt them? This is an organisation that have won 5 world championships over there. Okay, it is a bit of a joke calling it a world championship considering there's only teams from America playing it, but they still call it a world championship. I mean, if you look at their greatest ever head coach, the 49ers, a guy called Bill Walsh, never played the game at any high level, played college football, never played professionally in the NFL, built his way up through college, then into the professional game. So, again, like I said, it's working through a kind of family tradition. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is this the new manager? We're 99% of the way there, according to the Italian media. Let me know your thoughts, comments down below. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember always, we are the people.